Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a brand new series entitled Art Advice I Wish I Knew Sooner, or I would have paid to know sooner. I'm still workshopping it in my head. I recently filmed a video all about my different income streams and how I have managed to become a full-time independent artist and giving tips on those, and I got a comment from somebody saying that they would pay for like a whole course on all of the information that I was giving, but I'm feeling quite generous and I want to give this information for free because I feel like these are the things that I would have paid to know when I was younger, but maybe I couldn't afford. And I feel like this community has given so much to me, and so I want to talk about the lessons that I have learned. I finished art school in 2020 or 2021, I'm not sure. And since then I have been working as an independent artist and content creator, and I talk about that sort of journey in that video about my income streams and how I sort of got to where I am now. But I found like it was very difficult to sort of navigate that. So if I can make it easier for you guys, that's what I want to do. So I made a list of the lessons, like really concrete lessons that I wish I knew, and it's over 20, so I'm going to make this into a series, and I think I'm probably going to be able to cover like 5 today or something like that. So get yourself a coffee, get yourself a tea, because it's a rainy day in Paris. And we're going to talk about the art lessons I would have loved to know sooner. So what I really want to begin with today in this video is that everyone starts from somewhere. You know, maybe you're just in the beginning of your art journey and you're like, Shayna, I don't even know where to start. Like, I know I love to make art, but I don't have a community like you. That was one of the comments that I got under my video, and it was like, not everyone has a big YouTube community. And it's like, I didn't start with a big YouTube community, you know? And that's why it is so important for me to make videos like this. So if you do find yourself in the situation of being at the beginning of your career and knocking on doors and trying to get an opportunity from somebody else, what I would really recommend is to find a way to position yourself as a leader in your field to create community around your art and your business. And a good example of this is recently I saw a TikTok of this girl who was talking about how she really wanted to become a fashion photographer, but she had never taken photos before. She knew nobody. So how does one go from having no connections to then becoming sort of like a leader or having community built around them? Well, what she did was she created an online magazine. And so when she would contact people and say like, hey, I want to take your photos to start building my portfolio, she also said like, I'm starting this magazine, you know? And who says magazine also says community. People, I think, really respect you if you're taking your own project seriously, and creating a magazine is a real intention. So what kind of intentions can you place around your art? For example, for me, that took the form of a YouTube channel. You know, like, this is my little house. This is where people can come and either get art tips or discover what I'm working on and follow my journey. And that gives me a certain sense of credibility. So no, I didn't start a magazine, but I did start another project. So what kind of avenue can you take to position yourself as a leader? And I think a lot of artists are realizing that content creation is such a great avenue for that. For example, documenting your life as like a broke artist starting out. Like, people don't just want the success stories, they want to follow a journey. You know what I mean? There's this guy that I follow on TikTok, and he is a ceramist, and he has like all of these different part-time jobs, but you just like watch him going from, you know, art assistant to social media manager, and you're like respecting the hustle. So I would say that a lot of people are waiting for someone to come up to you like, on the street and say like, oh my God, do you want to be an artist? And it's just not gonna happen that way, you know? Like, people really are drawn to self-starters. Like, what kind of project can you include others in? And that magazine was such a fucking good idea, because you're inviting people to be a part of your project, you know? So if you are just starting out, maybe you're a painter, could you create an art club like with other painters in your area? How can you involve other people around you to make yourself a leader? I think what can make this like really challenging in the beginning is, and what was really challenging for me, I think, is that a lot of us end up turning to art because we are loners, you know? Like, for me, I sort of found my connection to the world through creating, but at the same time, like, if you have no one to share your art with and no community, it's almost like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, like, did it actually fall? You know what I mean? And I think that it is so important to have an audience when you're creating something, not to just validate you, but to create a sense of connection, you know? And something that I also added then to the list, and this is the second tip, is that you don't get an award at the end of your life for doing everything by yourself. You know, like, I used to think that I was so strong because I was like alone in my studio making my sculptures and like, I don't know, like, I think there is like this sort of mystery that we want to attach to being an artist. But I was working 2 jobs, I was broke, and one day I like wrote out to myself all of these requirements if I was going to really make it as an artist. I was like, I don't want to be a broke artist. I don't want to have to work like 2 shifts at a burger joint where I'm just like feeling like I don't even have energy to focus on my art, you know? So I think that, like I said, you don't get an award for doing things by yourself. You're not stronger by not asking for help. Like, I really feel like I'm the strongest when I'm making myself vulnerable and asking for help from people. For example, this is a really great example, is like earlier this year, I was robbed at gunpoint and I ended up losing like thousands of dollars because the person took my house keys and I had to break down my door to get inside. And I didn't necessarily want to share that story with my community because I felt like a little bit like dumb, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like, you dumb bitch, like, you knew better than to walk home that late at night. And I blame myself, you know? But I also realized that, like, Shayna, like, you can tell people right now that, like, financially you took a big hit, and give them the opportunity to want to support your art if they want to. And during that time, a lot of people purchased prints from me, and it really helped me so much in that situation. But had I decided like, no, I'm not going to tell anybody because I'm going to be stoic and like strong and deal with this myself, like, no one is going to give you an award for that, you know? And like, it's actually braver to share your struggles, because we can only really connect to others, I think, by like vulnerability. And so I would say that, for example, for you, maybe you're not going to get robbed anytime soon, but like, like, for example, tell people about your projects, tell people about your dreams and your goals and your ambitions, and say to them, like, if an opportunity crops up for this and this, would you think of me? You know, like, if you see an art assistant job, would you think of me? If there are any like you know, art shows coming up and you think a piece of mine would look great in it, think of me. Or do you want to come do a studio visit with me? And be very vulnerable about your desires, and don't be afraid to share that with people, and you'd be surprised how many people will think of you, you know? It's like that story I told the other day about like, when you're in a restaurant and you don't know what you want to order, or you don't ask for anything, and so the waiter just brings you back like whatever he wants. You know, there's this expression that's like, you have not because you ask not. And I think that we have learned that it's negative to ask for the things that we want or for help, but in reality, you are giving people an opportunity to be a part of your project, and you're trusting them. And asking for help is also a way to build trust. You know, if you're only saying like, this is what I can give to you, this is what I can give to you, without asking for help when you need it, you're saying that you don't really trust the people around you or your community with your vulnerability. So that was a really big lesson for me to learn, because I was always the girl in the fucking metro with 10 bags, not asking anyone to help me. What do I get from that? Back problems. And on that note, with, you know, telling people about your projects and reaching out to others, I also want to make a note about finding a mentor, because I think this is something I was never able to do. Like, I never did find a mentor, but I think that it could have really helped me in a lot of ways had I had the bravery to reach out to somebody and say, like, I really like what you're doing, would you take me under your wing? But having said that, I just want to add a note about like the way to go about doing that, because over the years I have gotten a lot of messages to my email of people who want to intern for me, and I think for me personally, like, I'm not really in a position where I would need an intern, but if I did, there's one mistake that I think a lot of people are making in those emails, and it's that they talk about in the email like all of the ways that they could benefit from an internship with me. Like, oh, I would help my art so much, and I really love you, and this, and all of that is like super flattering to hear. But at the end of the day, I think when you want to find a mentor, you also have to ask, like, what would your presence help them with? And I think it's really important to position yourself as somebody that also can give back. For example, if someone wrote the email and said, like, I would make your life easier because I would help with this, this, and this, and I hope that, you know, I would also gain experience, etc. Because I think that this is something that no matter what field you're in is very relevant. Like, think of how many emails like your favorite author gets, or, you know, how are you to choose somebody? You want to choose somebody that essentially, like, it's a reciprocal relationship, you know? So that's just like a tip that I would give if you do want to reach out and ask to intern for somebody, is always think, like, how can I... It's all about perspective and positionment. It's also like going back to the magazine thing. This girl didn't have any real experience in photography, but it's the way she positioned herself. It's like, for example, you know, like, I could take this coffee mug and I could say, like, this is just a stupid plastic mug, or I could say, this is the mug that my best friend drank out of one time, and I have so many beautiful memories of us sipping this mug. Everything is a story you attach to it. So position yourself as a mug that is like gonna bring somebody's life up, you know what I mean? Another big lesson that really took me a while to learn, it was really hard for me at first, because when you first are making art and you finally find your style and you're starting to get attention, then inevitably what happens is someone's gonna copy you, right? And when this would first happen, I would get really upset about it. And I'm thinking of this because recently a friend of mine who's an illustrator had this experience where somebody copied her artwork and posted about it. And I was telling her, like, this is something that no matter who you are, no matter what medium you're working in, this is going to happen if you're somebody that is reaching a certain level of success and you're inspiring people. Like, it comes from, there's gonna be like two sides, you know what I mean? And people always say, like, oh, it's flattery. I don't really necessarily agree that it's flattery, because it really hurts when somebody steals your artwork. But what I will say about that is, something that I really wish that I would have learned is that you really should try to create a moat around yourself and your art. I don't mean like isolating yourself, but I mean creating distance in the sense of, what about you is so unique and so singular that no one can really copy it. You know what I mean? For example, if you attach yourself to a certain style, like there was a time when I had like a very like colorful, like, I don't know, if you know, you know. If you've seen that artwork, you know. style, and honestly, like, it's very easy to replicate, you know? So if you attach yourself to a certain style and don't create that singularity in that moat, then yeah, obviously people are going to copy what you're doing. But what they can't copy is your story, which is why I think story is so important, and actually like talking about like how you got where you are with your art. They can't copy your soul, they can't copy your authenticity. So what about you can create this sort of moat that makes you untouchable? Like what about you? It could be like, for example, like for me, like yes, I have a style that is maybe easy to replicate, but no one can really copy like what I built online and be me. You know what I mean? Like just like I can't be them. So the more that you can find ways to make yourself different, like even around music, for example, like I do a lot of like synth, like dark synth type stuff, and that's easy to replicate, but people can't replicate like my exact performance or my energy. And I think that is what I learned, is like find what makes you really authentically you and lean into that. And because at the end of the day, people always want like the quick fix. Like people want like the McDonald's drive-through success. They don't want to take the time to build something, and so people are inevitably going to say that they're inspired by you and copy what you're doing, but make it just more difficult in the sense of they're not going to be able to copy your singularity if you really lean into the things that make you unique. Like what's easy for you is hard work for somebody else, you know? So really leaning into that. For example, I'll use myself. Like I think that I have a sort of like I don't give a fuck attitude with my performances, and I'm really into like being expressive, but I also really love a certain type of sound that's very experimental, and like I'm very into like sculpting sounds live. So in that sense, it makes me singular, more singular than if I was just like making music and posting it, you know what I mean? And for example, with my art, like yes, obviously like any type of art style is replicable, but when you are telling your audience a story and saying like, I made this because it made me feel like that and this and that, that is less easy to replicate. The process, the person behind the art, your voice is less easy to replicate. And so that's something that I would tell myself is let it go. When somebody copies you, let it go and just take it as a sign that you need to add more layers to make yourself more singular, you know? Having said that, it sucks, but rather than fight against something that like you can't really control, or say like, well, I'm not even gonna post anymore, then you're really just shooting yourself in the foot if you do something like that and you say like, oh well, I used to do that too. I would be like, I'm not gonna share my art because people are just gonna copy it. Well, if your art is so easy to copy and people are gonna give somebody else attention instead of you, then I would say you need to work more on your story and like creating a connection with people, so that even if somebody makes something similar to you, then it doesn't matter because they're not going to want to buy from them. They want to buy from you. They want to buy from you, girl. All right, I've only shared 4 of my tips. I have so many more, but obviously I have the gift of gab, so that's why I'm creating a series. But the last thing I just want to end on for today is that I wish that I had fixed my relationship with money a bit sooner, in the sense that I really do think that you have to spend money to make money, whether that is taking classes or, for example, investing in a space to create your art. And I think that I wish I would have known that you might lose the spare change, but wait, what is the expression? It's like, lose the change to make the dollars. You know what I'm saying? For example, yeah, like you might rent out an art studio that you could also share with a friend and like make that less expensive. But what is that giving back to you? You know, like I think if you have a space, you're able to make more art, potentially sell more paintings, make more connections. And I think a lot of us are so in this scarcity mindset. We want to hold on to things without taking the necessary steps that, like, financially sometimes it takes to get started. And everything worth having takes a little bit of an investment. But having said that, you know, I had a teacher once that told me, get started with the best materials you have today. For example, maybe you can't get like the best of the best paintbrushes, but get the best that you can afford. Because I promise you, like, if you get the best that you can afford, then that will come back to you in quality. You know, everything is an energy. You know, money is an energy and it comes back. I always tell myself that, like, you know, I've been as poor as you can be, and I have been doing really well when it comes to where I am as an artist. But I always remind myself that the consistent thing is to keep going. And also, when you invest in yourself and your business, it forces you to take more seriously what you're doing. You know, you're saying like, okay, I'm renting this art studio now, so I really need to take seriously and show up and do the work. And I think that sometimes a monetary investment can really push us in that direction of showing ourselves that we're taking ourselves more seriously. You know what I mean? That's why a lot of times, like, when somebody has like a clothing boutique, you're like, oh wow, like they're actually like investing something into it, and it makes you more interested in their project. So I'm not saying you need to like go rent out like a huge art studio, but ask yourself, like, is there a next step that I can take in investing in my art career that seems a bit scary but could also really help and benefit me? You know, like, I think everyone that I know that is successful realizes that you have to, you know, heal that relationship with money, and that you have to invest to get something back, you know, within reason. Like, don't go broke, but, you know, take a chance and take yourself seriously. For example, before getting into like a really big art school in Paris, I went to a prep year where it was quite expensive, but like I worked 2 jobs in order to afford this, and it really helped me get into a free, like, really selective art school. So like that was a step towards me saying, like, I'm taking myself seriously, you know what I mean? And I think that the universe, not to get all like the universe, but truly, it's just energy. It expands in relation to what we need, and it expands in relation to what we think is possible. So if you're moving the energy forward monetarily and also with your time and energy and intention, then there's no other possible, like, there's no other possible outcome than that you're going to benefit from it in some way, whether it's a lesson or, you know, opportunities. And it's really just about like jumping timelines. Like, you gotta treat yourself like you really believe it's a business, and take it seriously. And I think that in the beginning, I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and I had to work since I was 16. And so like really investing any sort of money into my art just felt like, oh my God, like, really, I'm gonna pay for this expensive prep year. But every time, like, I can think of every single time that I've, you know, invested into my art, into myself, into my own personal growth. I can't even name one time where I didn't get back more than what I put in. For example, had I not done that prep school, I wouldn't have gone into art school. I wouldn't have started my YouTube channel all about like my life in art school. I wouldn't have been able to have a community. Like, everything is like a domino effect. But it starts with taking a chance on yourself. So I want to end the video there on taking a chance on yourself. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a comment below so that I know to continue the series. If no one's interested, I'll keep my tips for myself, you know. But I just know for me sometimes, like, I really enjoy like listening to a friend or somebody who, I don't know, like, I think it's like that Lady Gaga quote. It's like, sometimes all you need is one person in a room to believe in you. You know, and I think sometimes all you need is like to hear that it's possible, you know, and to hear somebody else like telling you their own experience. So I'm really happy to do that, because I wish I would have had more of that when I first started out. And I also just wanted to say, like, a lot of times people under videos will be like, oh, you must be a Nepo baby or you must come from money. I've been financially independent since I was 18. You know, I've always done things by myself. I'm just really good at changing perspectives and looking for loopholes in things and seeking out opportunities. Like, I get a sort of high out of that. I always have. For example, if my friends were always looking for a job, I'd always love to look for the job for them. Like, I just really like seeking out opportunities, and so I just want to encourage you guys today. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here, for supporting my channel, and I hope that we can continue to grow together, support each other, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have any art tips or any questions that I can add into the next episode. I think I'm going to make like 3 or 4 of these. Well, yeah. If you guys did enjoy this video and want to support what I'm doing, I have a Patreon where I do extra podcast episodes, we do Paris meetups, Zoom parties, as well as I have a website with my art prints, or you can go stream my music or support the projects I have online. That's like a great way to support what I'm doing. I'd really appreciate it. So yeah, I will see you guys next time on the Purple Box. Bye!